Welcome to Support Activity 15C, Flight Frequencies. The table below is a two-way table, also called contingency table, and it gives the count for each value of the variable flight status for Delta Airlines and Southwest Airline arrivals at Atlanta Airport in March 2021. Notice that each row gives the distribution of flight status for an individual airline. So as you see, that table has Delta Airlines in the first row and the number of on-time, delayed, canceled, and diverted flights, and the same for the other airline, that Southwest. For Delta Airline, we can find the relative frequency of on-time flights or the proportion of on-time flights by looking at the ratio on-time flights to the total number of Delta Airline flights. So here is that Delta Airlines, and here is that on-time flights, and here is the total. So if we get the ratio of the on-time Delta Airline, that's mean we're gonna divide that 12,716 and divided by 13,651. And the answer will be 0.9315, which about that 93.15% of Delta Airlines arriving at Atlanta in March 2021 were on time. So we can actually do same thing for the rest of the flight status. So you can see the percentage of the delay, and same for the cancel, same for the diverted. Every time you will take that number and divide it by the total Delta Airlines flight. So we'll take, for the delay, we'll take 904 and divide it by the total of Delta Airlines. And we're gonna do same thing for cancel and diverted. So the percentage for the delay, it was 6.62%. For cancel, it was 0.17%, which is very low. And the diverted 0.06%. And basically the total, that percentages must be 100%. This is for the Delta Airlines. So I will give you a chance to do same thing for Southwest Airline. And you see the percentage of each status. I hope you get that. And that number, after you calculate it, it must be this way, which is gonna be 87.43%, 11.67%, 0.86%, 0.04%, and also the total will be 100%. We can also consider the total number of flights for each value of the flight status variable and look at overall relative frequency for each. So overall, the relative frequency for each, that means, for example, that there is a 12,716 plus 2,240, which is that 14,956 on-time flights in total for both airlines. And the total number of flights overall for both airlines is the total for the Delta plus the total for Southwest is gonna be 16,213 flights. Then overall relative frequency for on-time flight is that number, which is 14,956, and divided by the total for both, which is 16,230. So about 92.25% of flights were on time for both airlines combined. In this case, we will keep more decimal places to avoid rounding errors in our next computations. So find the overall relative frequency expressed as a percentage for each value of the variable flight status and complete the table. So we're gonna do actually the same thing for the delay. We're gonna find that overall flight percentage. So basically that we will find for the delay, for the canceled, and for the diverted. If you can do it yourself, you're gonna take the total delay flights and divide it by the total number of the flight for both airlines. So now for number 3, let's imagine that Delta Airlines and Southwest Airlines both had flight status proportion that match the overall proportions. For example, Delta Airlines would have 92.246962% of their flights around on time. Since Delta Airlines had 13,651 flights arrived in Atlanta in total in March 2021, so that's mean 92.246962% of the 13,651 will be about 12,592.633 is the number of flight that would expect to be on time. This is called the expected count of on-time flight if delta distribution matched the overall proportion. Similarly, for Southwest, we would expect they have 0.92246,962, and you multiply that by the number of on-time flight, and that's what we expect, or basically this is what we call the expected counts for the Southwest Airlines on-time flights. Notice that there were 14,956 total on-time flights for these two airlines in March 2021. So once we know that Delta would be expected to have 12,592.633 on-time flight if its distribution matched the overall proportion. So we could have found the expected number for on-time flight for Southwest by subtracting. So we take the total number, which is going to be 14,956 minus that 12,592.633. And basically, we should actually having the same number that we have by multiplying by the proportion. So we see that it would be the same number. So complete the table of expected counts for flights in both airlines had flight status distribution that match the overall proportion. Since we have actually the proportion for the delayed, so we can use this one, the overall proportion, and multiply by that number of delayed flights for Delta Airline and also for the Southwest Airline. Same thing, we have the proportion for that cancel flight. So we are actually use that overall proportion, and we take this multiply by each number for Delta Airline flights number and also for the Southwest, that we do the same thing. So this is the expected on-time flight for both, and this is expected delay time for both, and this is expected cancel flight for both, and this is the expected diverted flight for both. So for number 4, as we have seen in previous lesson, we can compare the observed and expected counts by calculating the difference between the observed count and expected count. So all the time we get the observed minus expected to compare these two counts. So we will do the observed minus expected for each cell. So for example, that for Delta Airlines, so that difference will be the number of flight was 12,716 minus that expected, which is 12,592.633 as we have here on that table for this number. Okay, so the number is basic that 123.367. So delta had 123.367 more on-time flight than would be expected in delta distribution match the overall. So basic, when you get the difference, you will see that basic, if you have more that a number or on-time flights than what we would expect it. If delta distribution match the overall proportion, okay? So we find and interpret the difference for Southwest delayed flights. So if you go find the difference between that observed and expected for the delayed number for the Southwest. So what we know that expected from the table, and we know the number of delayed. So the number of delayed was 299, and the number of basic expected delay flight was 190.100 here. So we get basic that if you forget, you just go back to the table up and you look for where is Southwest. That number here is 299, and basic that according to the expected table that for Southwest is 190. So basic, we subtract that. So the difference is 108. So that's mean there is 108, or Southwest had 108.9 more delayed flight than what would expected. Part B, when the difference between an observed count and corresponding expected count is negative, that means the expected count was larger than the observed count. So there were fewer observed value than expected. Finally, interpret the difference for Southwest on-time flight. We go for on-time flight for Southwest, so that means the observed is basic 2,240, and the expected is 2,363.367. So if we subtract these two numbers, we will have a negative 123,000. So 123.367. So Southwest had 123.367 fewer on-time flight than would be expected if Southwest distribution matched the overall proportion. Here's the end of the activity, and as you see that it's easy to do that math with this and get the difference between the observed and expected count. Thank you. Have a good one.